7 Days to Die, the poster child for excessively drawn-out early access periods. It's been on Steam for a decade, yet its unfinished state still feels way off in the distance. It's every cautionary tale for early access all rolled into one. Put it alongside newer, fancier, shinier games in the genre, and you have to wonder, why would people ever choose this? But they do, consistently. Updates will take a year or two to arrive and players get their teeth in, enjoy the new splash of paint, and then sit back and wait for more. The game's being drip-fed to them at a rate that's just enough to stop it fading away into obscurity. Despite the issues that plague the game, it's still one of, if not the best in the genre. How does this seemingly rudimentary title that's been kicking around since 2013 get so much wrong, but even more right? So we all know why people gravitate towards survival games. The thrill of living on a knife's edge can provide a steady dose of dopamine for weeks, months, or in the case of 7 days, years. There's the joy of discovery, the creativity of building, the strategic element of crafting a defendable base, and the simple pleasure of exploring an open, untapped world. The appeal of survival games is no secret. It's been a robust genre for years now. We're at the point where we've got dozens of different flavors and fancies. So why do people pick this one? There are plenty of titles that aren't just finished, but polished too. Subnautica, Grounded, The Forest, but they don't have the full package. They don't have that whole periodic base defense aspect that makes 7 Days appealing. Something like Valheim or Conan Exiles could scratch that itch, but they just don't. It's not quite there. Maybe it's about the zombies. Survival games with zombies. Are there many of them? I guess you could count Project Zomboid, Night of the Dead, Dying Light, The Infected, Dead Poly, Myst. Man, I've probably missed a dozen or two there. Okay, alright. It's definitely not the zombie angle that helps it stand out. But there's not one sole aspect that keeps this game appealing. It's not the setting or the premise or the gameplay loop that has kept it trucking on whilst dozens of other competitors have been developed, released, and lost to irrelevance. It's not even the fully destroyable, fully sculptable world that gives it this edge. It's a great feature, but it's not unique. No, 7 Days just seems to mix a lot of things together, and it somehow works. It's not pretty, but it just ticks. It's this culmination of little features done in its own unique way that just make the game work. Other examples might have some more flash, more personality, may look a hell of a lot better, but they just don't have the same appeal. This may look battered and beaten on the outside, but inside, it's going the distance whilst others are breaking down and falling behind. While it's improved visually since its early days, you can't deny, it just doesn't hold up to some of the other better looking games in the genre. But with each update, its ugly hewn edges are being addressed. New zombie models, updated environments, higher fidelity textures, more eye candy in every regard is being added to the game, with much more planned. Each update takes something that's sticking out like a sore thumb and gives it some love. Alpha 21 brings new trader compounds, prettier building sets, higher resolution texture maps, all sorts of good stuff that is slowly improving the look of the game. It's quite hard to look at. But among these good things, there's a whole load of bad hiding just below the surface. The game was always slow to update, but things are getting even more sedated than usual. Updates took 6 months, then a year, then 18 months. Other survival games are announced, developed, and released in between one alpha stage and the next. The elusive 1.0 may seem like it's only a couple of patches away, but given the current delivery speed, that could still be 3 or 4 years. With every patch, there comes exciting news, new additions, that hot feature we've been waiting for years. But that anticipated feature doesn't make it. The devs prioritize one aspect and push another back, usually for a few patches, which means anywhere from 1 year to 7. They've talked about adding bandits for years now. Those plans seem to be in earnest about halfway through its early access cycle. In 2016, there were files in the game, models, and everyone saw it as a shoe-in for Alpha 15. But the update came and went, as did the next one, and several more after, and in Alpha 21 dev diaries 7 years later, they're still sharing concept art and talking about their bandit plans. But these things feel further from being implemented now than they did back then. Instead, major updates introduce some kind of overhaul in one way or another. A new farming system, different ways to craft, changes to camping, a complete dig-up and rewrite of skills and how they're obtained. In other cases, they go over finished points of interest and just remake them, fancy-file them a little bit. Several times, very little new is added. Instead, players are given the same thing they already had, but just a little bit better. Instead of filling in the void of content and going full steam ahead on the parts of the world that are left to be filled, the devs are painting the same bits over and over. And when the actual new content to spruce up the world is added, it's done so in such an ineffective way. There's plenty of areas that really could do with the attention. Instead, the players get things that I'm sure very few actually asked for, like 500 different door varieties, or zombie jiggle physics. And now we go from the bad to the downright ugly. So over the years, swathes of the game's fans have felt left in the dark. A lack of communication, however, is nothing compared to the experience that's been had by those poor souls who decided to play the game on a console. The game launched for PlayStation and Xbox players, and then immediately became stagnant. The game stayed at Alpha 15 for these ports, whereas the PC counterpart kept evolving, painfully slowly I might add, but evolving nonetheless. But it gets worse. The features that made their way to the port were stripped back versions. No dedicated servers, missing game systems, limited skills, there were fewer zombie types, fewer structures, and the map generation was even worse than its PC counterpart. And that's a low bar. Granted, a large portion of the blame for this disaster should be heaped on Telltale Games, who produced the port before folding, but surely the fun pimps could have done something. It took over 4 years from Telltale going bust to players hearing that there were plans for another stab at a console release. That's 4 years of players having no clue what's going on and being stuck with a game that was dead on arrival. And then there's the rest of the ugliness, the graphics, the AI, the engine, things that you could quite easily criticize about a game. But the longer you think about those things, the more you realize that they're the contributing factors to making the game work. We've seen the good, we've dug into the bad, we've recoiled at the ugliness. Now we're trying to find more things to dislike about the game, but these imperfections make the game what it is. They make it good. We've gone full circle, would you look at that? Things like the game's AI, for want of a better word, it's just brain dead. It won't approach a structure and think of a smart way to attack. It will just charge face first towards the point of least resistance. The AI isn't smart, but for this game that's brilliant. You don't want something that's unpredictable and intelligent. The building aspect of the game is a puzzle. Your build works if it's logical. If it fails, there's an obvious reason. The simplicity of 7 Days is what puts it ahead of its competitors. The same goes for the building, the weapon progression, the core systems, even the engine. It's built in Unity, which often gets a bad rap. You can look at it, think it looks basic, and imagine how much better it might be in Unreal. But then you look at survival games built in Unreal, things like Myst, Night of the Dead, The Infected, and Scum. Yeah, they all look better, but none of them feel special. They feel like reskins of each other. There's no love there. In Unity, however, you get this charm of a destructible voxel world that feels completely at your fingertips. One of the major gripes about the game is its snail-paced development speed. But in a way, even that's a blessing. The game has built up a robust modding scene with talented individuals turning the game on its head. Huge overhauls, fleshed out systems, tons of new enemies, factions and mechanics. There are several of these massive game-changing mods, and each one breathes new life into the game. And there's no worry about the game developers throwing in new updates and making the mods unstable, because the game developers are slow as hell, giving the mod creators time to perfect these versions and the players the ability to play them, enjoy them, and experience the game in a whole new light whilst they wait for the official game updates. None of this is speculation. None of this is what the game could be. Just what it is. With an early access so long and drawn out, you kind of just forget that there's an intention to get it into a finished state. I feel like a good chunk of the player base half expect these updates to just keep on going and going and going ad infinitum. We just assume that the game will probably never be finished. But let's just, for a minute, think about what happens if it is. There's so many features that have been dangling in front of players, but never made their debut in the game. Bandits, factions, the enigmatic Duke of Narvisgain, the mysterious Noah, character models that feel they belong in 2023, thematic armor sets, an actual story, all the stuff that would make the game complete, the things we've been waiting for years, the aspects we learned to live without. Well, what if we got them? What if the game actually went gold and was complete? We've played this game for years, and we've been singing its praises and recommending it to our friends when it's still in an obviously incomplete state. It's kind of exciting that this brilliant mess of a game could actually become cohesive. Despite its many flaws, it's one of the best of the genre, and it stood the test of time. How much more elevated will that status be when we have a 1.0 product? When it's all it was promised to be? When we don't have to rely on mods to fill out the world? For the first time in a long time, it seems like this wild ride might actually finish. Let's be honest, it's probably going to be a couple more years of getting our hopes raised and dashed, but it might actually make it. Those 10 years getting to this point haven't been the journey at all. It's just a prelude to the next phase. It's crazy to say it, but the best survival game in 5 years might be the one we were playing 10 years ago. There will no doubt be things that are prettier, shinier, flashier, newer. But will there be anything that has the same ugly charm, that inexplicable appealing quality that 7 Days to Die has running through its every fibre? I have my doubts. This game is truly one of a kind.